Welcome to the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers podcast channel. My name is Jen Thiessen.
And I'm Kyla Musselman, and we'll be here to guide you through these episodes, which are made possible thanks to Canada Council for the Arts.
The Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers, CGDC, is a national arts service organisation advocating for the rights, interests and protection of stage directors and choreographers and their assistants and associates.
These first episodes are snippets from our Assistant and Associate Program series, featuring industry leaders with insight about the theatre creation process, shared with you with the hopes of enriching our community.
In today's episode, we demystify being a director with legendary director Tracey Flye.
Okay, we are incredibly thrilled and lucky to welcome Tracey Flye into the room today. Tracey is one of Canada's most respected and accomplished directors and choreographers. With over 200 productions to her name, Tracey's distinguished career includes numerous prestigious awards, a 12-year association with the legendary rock band Queen on We Will Rock You, direction and choreography credits that span the country, including at Musical Stage, Theatre Aquarius, Citadel Theatre, The Grand, RMTC, Charlottetown Festival, Vancouver Opera, Mirvish, and the Stratford Festival. She was also the resident director for National Theatre's Warhorse, and once for Mirvish Productions was the associate choreographer for Peggy Sue Got Married in the West End. And from its North American debut, Tracey was the assistant choreographer for the Canadian and U.S. national tour of Mamma Mia. Iconic. That is iconic behavior. Beyond her work on the stage, Tracey is deeply committed to the mentorship and development of young and craft artists. She continues to share her well of knowledge, stories, and experience with the next generations in her deeply passionate and kind manner. I have, and I'm so grateful and continue to learn from Tracey. She is also a founding member and current board chair of CGDC. Yes. Tracey Flye. Welcome to the stage, Tracey Flye.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi.
Thank you all for being here. I'm super excited to share some time with you all. As you heard in some of what Kai was saying, I've spent a good portion of my career before launching on my own as an assistant and an associate. So I have a deep relationship and understanding of what both those positions mean. Those experiences as an assistant and associate helped me immeasurably as I moved forward on my path. Kai talked about last year's course, and what I talked about was what you do in pre-production from when you get a show to getting to the first day of rehearsal. So I really want to jump from that point and find ourselves at day one. Some of you, through your own experience, may know a lot of this already, but I think I just want to share what my experience and my process is, and you can take from it what you will and drop away anything that doesn't make any sense to you. Two words that I use a lot and continue to use are communication and collaboration. They're basically my mantra and integral to my practice and process. I have found that they will facilitate every interaction that you have on the journey and will help you to navigate your way to opening and really in life, right? Without collaboration and communication, what are we? But they are the foundation on which I base almost everything. And as we know in this beautiful industry of ours, nobody does any of this alone. The best productions are always the ones where collaboration is so strong that the production feels seamless and fluid, where the language of the piece is consistent throughout all aspects of design, movement, choreography, transitions, text and or music. Collaboration. There's a third word that I like to use, and that is stewardship. As a director and choreographer, that is what you undertake, the stewardship of a production. At the end of the day, after all the collaboration and after all the communication is done, someone has to make the decisions and take the responsibility for the show. Otherwise, there's a good chance, as we know, that chaos will ensue. So I use the word stewardship, which to me is the job of taking care of something on behalf of a group of like-minded individuals. And ultimately, it's the vision of the director or the choreographer that the artists are facilitating, but collaboration is what makes or breaks how the room works, how discoveries are made, and ultimately how the cast and crew find their way to the ownership of the production, which is incredibly important, that your company of artists feel that they have ownership of the show that they're doing, that they have contributed deeply to what we see ultimately in the final product. 3 words that have made my life incredibly easy as I learned to use them are I don't know. We can't have all the answers all the time. And when you're standing at the front of a room as the steward of a production, a million questions come your way from your cast, from designers, from collaborators, from stage management, from everybody. And you just can't possibly know all the answers, nor is it honestly realistic to think that you can. You'll be asked to respond to things that you never, ever even considered, which is awesome and scary and confusing. And I don't know is powerful. It's human, it's honest, and it allows consideration. I'll get back to you, let me think about it, or tell me more are really good things to use as well. Communication, communication, communication. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. It opens the door to all kinds of discussion. We find ourselves at day 1, and you have pooped your pants the night before, circled the drain with the imposter syndrome, and are sure you're going to fail, and everybody's going to figure out that you don't know what the frick you're doing. Welcome to the creative process and stewardship. Everybody does it. Everybody feels it. It's okay. It's like butterflies before you step on the stage, or nerves, or sometimes abject terror for some. But you're not alone in feeling it. I still do. And I think anybody who says they don't is a liar, because at some point we all don't know what we're doing and it's scary. So it's day 1. And probably at this point you will have had some chats with your stage manager already. You'll have exchanged paperwork, cast lists, contact sheets. You will have given them your scene breakdown, which they magically make into a comprehensive and legible Excel spreadsheet, and other documents that you've devised with your sound designer, aka SFX cues, props list, breakdowns from your set designer, and wardrobe breakdown. Stage managers are usually available 1 week before you go into rehearsal, because that's when they are contracted. Generally speaking, you don't get to chat with them before that unless you're super lucky. And when their prep week begins, they're going to have a lot of questions for you. As most of you probably know, your stage manager and your stage management team especially are your best friend and lifeline. Your stage manager is actually the boss of you and the room, and I like to tell them that and let everybody know that all the time. Befriend them, listen to them, and use them. They are skilled, and a good stage manager is worth their weight in gold. The relationship you develop with them is crucial and indispensable. They are going to talk you down. They're going to make sure that you are okay to continue in your practice. They're going to look after the show when you leave. They're going to call the show the way you ask. And they're going to help facilitate a rehearsal process that is efficient, organized, and free of scheduling cucaracha. So share information with them. Don't withhold it. And when they ask you to do your homework, like your cue sheets or some scheduling, do it. They will stay on you. But honestly, as you all know, as artists or creatives, that stage management team is really a lifeline. Day 1, you will have already made a schedule for this with your stage manager. Usually, as we know, there's a meet and greet. And as you know, there are staff and cast introductions, and often the director is asked to say something magical about the play or musical they're about to embark on. I hate that with a passion, because we haven't made it yet. And that in itself makes me shake. I don't like it. We can always have an idea of where we want to go, but the discoveries we're going to make together in the room are going to elevate anything that I have figured out. So I'll leave that to you. You'll have to come up with something to talk about when they ask you that question, or just say what I do. I'm not sure, we haven't made it yet. And while all those introductions are super important, and that talking is, I don't like to belabor that process of meet and greet. I'm kind of, a time is of the essence kind of gal, because we have about a minute and a half to rehearse these days. And so any and all time to me is valuable and cherished. So let's do all the stuff we need to do in the hi, how are you? Great, see you later. And then let's get to business. Usually after the room clears, there's equity biz if you're on an equity contract, there's EDI discussions, there's room agreement conversations to have. It has been my practice to come up with a room agreement the way that I like to work, and I actually send that to the stage manager to disseminate to the cast before we go into rehearsal. And that gives everybody a chance to kind of digest what I think is important. And then when we come to that point on that first day where we're going to talk about everything, people have had the opportunity to digest that already. And then we can have a conversation about what needs to be added, what's missing, what do you need, what kind of things would you like to add in it. I also like to make sure that that document, that room agreement, and it's an agreement because it's based on all of our thoughts, is fluid and open so that at any time we can re-examine it, talk about it, add to it. And it's always there. I post it in the rehearsal hall, and it also goes to all the departments that we're going to work with, our crew, so they know how we have been working and how we want to work when we get into the theater and what they can expect. It's important, I think, in addition to the introductions of assistants and associates and DCs and fight captains if you have them, and intimacy captains if you have them already, that you let the cast know what those people's responsibilities are going to be, what they're going to be responsible for. They may not know everything now, but they will in time. And I think you have to let the company know that and let them know that they will be an invaluable resource. When we're gone and the show is running, when we're busy and we're in rehearsal, those people are the people you need to go to. Endow them with your confidence and let them grow into their responsibilities. Endowing those assistants and associates, you guys, and any of those captains with your confidence will help tenfold in the end for you. It's really important. On a non-musical, there's often a read-through, sometimes attended by staff, and a design presentation by sets of costumes, which can precede the read or follow it, and that's your choice. You can figure out what works best for you. And then you just can decide what the rest of the day is going to be, whether you're going to start with table work, what's going to happen. On musicals, it's a bit different. I usually get to music right away since it's such an integral partner in what we do, but we need to know what the music is before we can do a read or even contemplate anything else. So depending on your rehearsal period, the number of your music days will vary. If we're lucky, we get 3. If we're really unlucky, you get 1.5. And you hope to do the best that you can to get everybody on board in those days. We all know what that looks like. And during that time, if I don't have to sit and listen, if I'm not choreographing and I haven't got to all the music yet, I book time to start discussions with cast that isn't being used. And when they're not used, to start talking about character and relationships and, talking through things with those individuals. And then after the music has been learned, maybe day 3, if we're lucky, that's when I usually have the read, sing, and we do the design presentations and then can do some table work with everyone together. Again, that would be your choice, but I don't find it, in my experience, helpful to try and do a read through and have somebody else sing or someone play just music without them actually being able to bang through stuff. And then after that, in both cases, it's really about how you use your time wisely to facilitate how you get everything done. Some signposts for me are, I really like to plot out where I think the days are going to go, where I think and where I need to have act 1 finished by and where I need to have act 2 finished by, so that I can look at the schedule and make sure that we have time to do some run-throughs with the cast, for designers, for everything else. And it's especially important, those signposts and the work we do are incredibly important, especially for your lighting designer, especially for LX. I also find it incredibly helpful to work chronologically if I can, especially when you're working on new work, to figure out how the flow is going to go, how scenes and set changes are going to work, where props are being tracked. It saves you a lot of work in the long run than having to go back and go, oh my God, I made a decision before that's not going to facilitate. Oh my God, how am I going to get that? Oh, how do we do this? So I really like to work chronologically if I can. However, if you're working at a festival or somewhere where you're in rep, That might not always be the case. It's like, I'll use an example at Strats. If you work at Stratford, you have primary, secondary, and tertiary rehearsal days, which means you only get your full cast on primary days. So it requires, before you walk in to that rehearsal, that you have had detailed conversations, which happens in the pre-production phase with your designers. So especially when you are working in rep, that you know exactly where and what you've got on the stage, where it's coming from, where it's going. So when you're actually rehearsing out of sequence, you already know where things have to come and go and who has to move them. So it requires a tremendous amount of brain power on your part and organization to know how that's going to happen. During a rehearsal period, especially on a musical, if you're a director and choreographer, your work literally never ends. You'll be prepping for the next day, most evenings after rehearsal, especially with choreo, because when you've gotten in the room, even though you've done a ton of prep, you know that when you get in the room and you start working with artists, so many amazing things happen, so many amazing discoveries are made, and you get to throw everything out and start again or make a lot of adjustments. So expect to be working long hours. It just happens. It's exactly the same as an actor learning your stuff, except we have to be ready to create the next day. Speaking of your cast, may I say that casting is everything. Casting is everything. If you're able to cast artists that speak to you and your vision and embody the role as you imagine, cast them. It will make your work so much easier. A room full of talented, generous, and collaborative artists. Oh my God, there's that word again. Collaboration, collaborative is a dream. And when you find that, your room and your work is so much easier. So casting is so important. I always think about, who do I want to spend 6 weeks with in a room where we're trying to come together and have a good time and be joyful and find a way to our production. And then I also think, after I leave, who do I feel confident walking away from, knowing that they're going to maintain the integrity of the show and also support each other. It's part of what I think about when I'm casting as well, not just ability.
Have you ever started talking with an actor about character work prior to the rehearsal production, or is that not always a theater practice?
In our day and age now, we are not allowed to. You cannot speak with actors and give them any work or talk unless they reach out to you. But you cannot, they're not under contract, and that is work that they are not obligated to do. Just like you cannot ask people to come in knowing all their music. You might suggest and have it available for them on big musicals or shows where they're required to play and sing at the same time, aka Once, Dollar Quartet, Ring of Fire. And that's up to the individual and the artist about how much work they want to do before they come in. But you, as a director or choreographer, cannot ask them to do any of that. And then you can start day one having those conversations.
Can you speak on how your process, maybe going into rehearsal prepping, changes from existing work to new work, and what those differences are like if you're doing a creation of a new work versus creation of an existing work?
For sure. In your pre-production, and when you've been contracted, as I've said in the other lecture, you will have had a chat with the artistic director and the theater already, talking about concept and what your artistic vision may be, and what the theater is comfortable with based on their mandate and their audiences. We can't always do what we want. We have to speak to an artistic body at a theater and how they feel it's going to resonate with their audience. And we take our cues from those conversations that we've had long ago with that artistic director that has hired us to do that show. So based on what that is how you approach the work. It's the same as how you approach a script, how you break it down into units, what you see, how you feel. You have found material. It's there. It's been tried and true, so to speak. You are limited in what you can change and what you can mess with. You have to ask permission from the licensing bodies, and they can either say yes or no. If you're working with MTI and there's text changes, any of those things, you have to go to the licensing bodies who go to the playwrights. As you know, we don't mess with text. We don't mess with people's work. It's just plain disrespectful to do so without permission. And I use that word permission in this case because we are actually asking to change something that someone else has done. So we can do that, and you have to be ready for the answer to be no thank you. I don't like to use the word permission very much, but that's literally what we have to do when we're asking to change someone else's work. But when you're working on something new, obviously found material, as we all know, it's the show, it's what it is. We can change it conceptually or our vision, but we're working with material and it's up to us to figure out how we want to do that. Obviously, when you're working on a brand new piece, generally speaking, you have already, when you've been brought on to direct a new piece of theater, you will have in pre-production had many conversations with the writers. Usually as a director, you may also be the dramaturg on the project, or there may be a dramaturg who you will work with. And that team of writers, composers, the dramaturgs and yourself will have worked very differently bringing it to rehearsal. And I think when you move into rehearsal, I always say when I'm working on a new piece and it's part of my room agreement, that this is a brand new piece. And so we have to accept the same way we do in a found piece, in a tried and true piece of theater, that there will be changes and discoveries made. And we can expect that kind of work and those changes can happen, especially in dialogue, in staging, in character development, everything. If it's a work in progress and it's new, we're going to continue to work on that. At some point, we freeze the show, just like we do at any time. But there are a lot more unanswered questions on a new piece than there are on a piece that is already established. And if things aren't working, you have to drop any ego that you have. And really, it's unhealthy to have very much of an ego in this. I know we all have it. But when you're up at the front, this is a collaborative room. You have to be willing to let go of things if they don't work and accept responsibility that, and I often say, artists are amazing and they'll go with you, but you can see when it's not working and you just have to go, that was not a fruitful idea. That was not the strongest choice. There's no wrong. It's just something's better or something serves the piece more, and you have to be willing to let go of stuff. So we're in our rehearsal process and we've been in it for a little bit now. And as the creative, you will continue to have creative meetings throughout the process with your designers over lunch, during breaks when you can grab it, after rehearsal. And this is when we have to finalize all those decisions, design decisions. And sometimes the workload is heavy, but that's why we get paid the big bucks. Any changes that as they occur in rehearsal have to be disseminated to the designers, especially lighting, especially blocking. They need to know that. And your stage manager will be, again, invaluable in disseminating all that stuff because you don't have the time. That's also when you use your assistants and associates. That's also when you ask them to make sure that they keep a track of everything and they check in every day with your stage manager and make sure that everything is on track if you don't have time. At some point during this time, your sound designer will send you a list of sound effects and sounds and everything else that you will need to listen to, respond to, and choose from so that they can have them loaded when we go into tech. In terms of lighting design and designers, I mentioned that you would have to know approximately when you'd be able to get through Act 1 and Act 2. I can't tell you how important this is. Your show and the way it looks hinges on your ability to disseminate information and have that conversation constantly with your lighting designer. Unfortunately, lighting designers, their plots are due about a minute and a half after we start rehearsal, when we haven't even blocked anything, when we haven't done anything. We have had conversations already in pre-production about how we want the show to look, what we think, how we think it's going to move, but we haven't really blocked anything. We haven't really figured out and fleshed out big numbers. And so it's really important that you give as much information to your lighting designer as is humanly possible and as clear a picture as you can to help them facilitate your and their vision and their design. The LX plot and the number of lighting instruments you have and all of that is predicated by budget, which you know ahead of time. And it isn't easy to change directions afterwards. So you want access to as many possibilities that you can, as many movers as you can, LEDs if you can, pixelated LEDs if you can, all the things that are going to make it possible for your designer to give you as much as you want, and they can only do that with as much information as you can give them. What I find is extremely important and useful, and I do it on non-musicals as well as musicals, is every time we block a section, I video it and I put it in a Dropbox that's available for that designer to look at. Whenever we finish choreographing a number, it's videoed so that they can look at it and know what's happening and see what's going on. And I try and do it as soon as possible and as many times as possible so that resource is there for them as they start trying to figure out how they do stuff. And as we move through, then we're going to say when runs are, when they are design runs, when everybody shows up, they can see what we're doing, how things have transpired, and we try and stick to those. And usually I really like to have 2 or 3 runs in the hall before we even get to the stage, because as we all know, when we do move to the deck, we lose the show because it's not about the show and the work anymore. It's about the tech around it. So feeling confident in your work, but also making sure that your artists feel confident in their work really helps the process when we get to tech, when we lose it, and you can trust that it all is going to come back. As you get closer to tech, you may be asked to do a paper tech. This doesn't always happen, and sometimes there isn't enough time to do it. For those of you who have never done it before, it's a rehearsal without set or actors, and it just allows stage management and the technical and design team to get all the cues in their book, to talk through how the show's going to run and make sure that everybody's on the same page before we actually get in to the venue. Sometimes we don't have time for it. Sometimes it's not possible, but it usually would happen, after rehearsal one evening for about 3 hours to bang through everything and really help your stage manager figure out where and what's going to come at them. They will be getting lists of cues from every department, lighting, sound, video, projection, you name it. They've got lists that they got to put in their book, because ultimately they're going to figure out how to cue the show from it and how to call it musically and to your wishes and to the designer's wishes. And currently on the other side of things, while we're rehearsing in the room, there will come a time on the technical side of things when load-in begins. And you'll get daily updates from your technical director about what's going on. Sometimes your production manager, but mostly it's your TD who's going to send you things about what's happening. And you can look at that. You will get a master schedule and you have to look at what's happening as well, because they will load in and you'll be asked, stick your head in now and then, have to answer some questions, have to make some decisions and some changes about what doesn't actually fit, what might not work, and what they've discovered loading the set in. And once the load in is complete, then the LX hang starts. And once that's completed, then the focus begins. And once the focus is done, and that focus means that your lighting designer will focus all those instruments that they've hung on particular areas to facilitate multiple areas of coverage and achieve the design that you all want. And once that focus is completed, they'll be ready to do lighting levels with you. And that usually happens at the end of day, in the evenings, sometimes in the mornings if your schedule's different, but you're going to go in for 2 to 3 evenings, probably 6:30 to 10:30 or 11, and sit with your lighting designer and go through the show and let them show you all the looks for every scene, every number. Sometimes internal cues aren't done. That all happens during tech. There's a million cues that happen. But just so you have an idea of what it is, what the levels look like, whether you want it lighter, darker, what you're looking for, that happens on those evenings that you're doing levels. And at some point during that time, sound is going to come to you as well and say, I've loaded all the cues we chose in the board. I want to show them to you. And you can make some decisions. You'll choose all the sounds. You'll choose the levels or the beginning levels to start with. One thing I will tell you, and you'll realize that in musicals especially, but in sound effects and cues. When there are bodies in the theater, they absorb sound. So you're going to start at a certain level, but you'll know when you have to push it because of how much sound is being absorbed by the bodies in the room as well. You'll also, at this point, if you have video or projection, have a show and tell with video and projection that you've also been working on and they've been sending you and you've been looking at during the whole process. And you'll look at that projection and video without lights so you can see what it really looks like. And then you'll start working with lights. And your video projection and lighting designer really have to come to a collaborative relationship to not wash each other out. And that's a big challenge in some venues, but you'll start working on that in those nights. And then we do our final run in the hall and everybody goes, oh my God. And then you move to cue on deck. And in all this time, you've been working with musical director and collaborating closely. We've talked about that in pre-pro, and you know that they are your best friends because in a musical, that is your acting partner. And you know, as actors, when you get on stage, you know what the process is, but for the creatives, it's very different. And it literally is where you have to wear as a creative multiple hats and where your assistants, associates, and captains become incredibly valuable to you. Because while you're answering a million questions from your designers and looking at other things, your assistants and associates can be doing the work, continue doing the work that needs to be done when we're stopping, when we're starting, and when we are setting other things. I personally work through the show from the beginning of the show with everything happening at once, because for me to jump from scene to scene, to song, it's not helpful, and it allows everybody to continue doing the work that they need. So cue to cue for me is basically a work through of the show with all tech. Obviously, we don't have costumes at the beginning because that's just one thing that we just don't need to add into the mix until we need to add it into the mix. But I move through cue to cue, basically beginning to end. We move through cue to cue. We are trusting deeply that everyone is holding on to things. You're going to sit at the production table during that tech time and listen to cues being called by your stage manager and respond to their timing. You're going to sit with your LX video projection, sound designers, and respond to what's happening on stage and make adjustments to almost everything with them. And they are going to have suggestions that are really smart and super helpful. And you're going to listen to all of that and take it on board. And when the band gets added, we have a whole other thing that happens with a SITS probe, with sound levels, and you're going to respond to what you hear and ultimately ask if there's any way you can have another level session with the band and the actors so that everything sounds great. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. Then we're going to do a quick change rehearsal, which has to be scheduled and used. And the actors are going to practice their quick changes, and you're going to sit with designers during that time because you can't do anything and do work and fine tuning with them. Or you're going to lay down in the aisle of the theater and close your eyes and try and sleep or lay across the seats like I like to do somewhere dark and just listen to the cucaracha for a while and like decompress. And when costumes are added, you're going to respond now to what you see and answer costume. And you'll use all those days to critically shape the show with all the technical elements. And usually there's no note sessions during cue to cue, and I call them observations versus notes. But there are none of those sessions with crew or designers during cue to cue because you're working all the time and you're working through that every day. Though there may be work on from all the departments in the mornings before you get into the theater, especially on long days, because they have to do work on set and other things. Observations begin with your technical crew and designers after the first tech dress, and it usually happens right after the show. Sometimes you can sit in the house, sometimes you have to go somewhere else, and you talk about what needs to happen for the next day, what you saw, and then those amazing crew and designers come in the next morning before rehearsal and they do a bunch of notes for you based on what they just saw. And that happens. And then you're going to have thoughts and observations with your cast when you can. And if not, I I start emailing notes and observations to the cast, or else you run out of the ability to speak with them. And that process happens all the way till the end of the last preview. And somewhere in there, after all of that, you're going to realize that you did get back to the show and that you're able to look at everything as a whole. And that you, as the steward, your design colleagues, crew, and cast have found that you have landed in a place of joy and pride because you built this amazing show on the foundation of collaboration and communication, and now ownership for them of the show, right? And all of a sudden, it will be time to let the baby grow on its own. You have done the birthing and it's opening. And after that, you leave it in the hands of your tremendous cast and your stage management team and the assistant and the associate if they stay. And if not, they also walk away. But those captains and that stage management team will take care of that show and maintain its artistic integrity. Happy opening.
Happy opening. Thank you, Tracey. Just to summarize some of the amazing things that you said, you've reiterated that collaboration and communication are the foundation, and we are also the stewards of the project. The stewardship is the job of taking care of something on behalf of a group of like-minded people. I don't know is a powerful response that allows you time to consider. You're not alone in your poop your pants before day one feeling. Stage managers are the gift from above, and the bosses in the room. Share info with them and do the homework that they ask you. Endow your captains, assistants, and associates with your trust and share with the room their responsibilities. Casting is everything. Do you want to spend 6 weeks with these people? Do you trust them to continue the stewardship of the show? Drop your ego and accept responsibilities. Video scenes for designers so that they know what it looks like, so that they can bring their magic to the stage. And after tech and previews have come to an end, realize that you have come back to the show and what it means, and you've done the birthing. Happy opening night. Thank you so much, Tracey.
My pleasure.
This podcast was made possible by Canada Council for the Arts and brought to you by the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers. CGDC advocates for the rights, interests, and protection of professional stage directors, choreographers, and their assistants and associates.
To learn more, give them a follow on Insta at official CGDC or check out their website, cgdcweb.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a review, a like, or a follow. And if you have any questions or queries about today's episode, please shoot us an email over at canadianguilddc@gmail.com. Thanks for helping us build better pathways and being a part of our community.